This is White Plains Week, the weekly roundup of White Plains, Westchester, and world news. With John Baley, editor and publisher of the daily internet newspaper White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, WPCNR.com. Jim Benneroff, editor and publisher of SuburbanStreet.com and WhitePlains.com. And me, Peter Katz, formerly with NBC, ABC News, and stations from Boston to Los Angeles. White Plains Week, what's happening, who are the newsmakers, what's in store for the future. The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the participants. White Plains Week is presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76, Verizon Fios Channel 45, and on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. Now, White Plains Week.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. White Plains, Westchester, and the world. John Baley, Citizen Net Reporter, here with the City News Roundup Show. And I'm joined by, of course, the anchor for all seasons, Peter Katz, to my right, and Jim Benneroff is on assignment this week. Now, the stories of the week in White Plains, New York, USA, for March 31st, 2017. White Plains prepares for the French-American School public hearing on the alternative site plan for Ridgeway Country Club. Common Council denies the group home for the disabled at Prospect Park, 22 New York Avenue. Over 25% of White Plains Public School 7th and 8th graders opt out of the new and improved open-ended English language assessment tests. 16% of all grades 3 to 8 are kept out of the test by White Plains parents. That's up 3% over last year. State Senator George Latimer will have an announcement next week on whether he will run against County Executive Robert Astorino. Senator Latimer also says, as of Thursday, there is no agreement on the budget in Albany that is due tomorrow.
April 1st.
That's right.
You
April
know,
Fool's Day.
That's right. Isn't that unusual?
It's a great coincidence. Every year.
Yep.
Right. Now, the City of White Plains plans to unveil its 2017-18 budget on Monday evening. We look forward to that one. Peter Katz will have another edition of Trump the President, and for those of you keeping score at home, 1,391 days remain in Mr. Trump's first term. Westchester County starts repairing the North Boardwalk at Playland, damaged by Hurricane Sandy in 2012 with FEMA money. The basket on the South Broadway traffic island is back. We've noticed it this week.
Had been hit by a car, and the Beautification Foundation in the city replaced it.
Right. And it's time to play ball at last.
You think it's spring finally?
Yes. Now,
when does spring training begin, or has
it begins on March the 1st.
Oh, so it's been underway.
Yes.
I haven't noticed any spring training games being televised. I guess they're still doing that, right?
I think they may be doing it on the
cables.
Networks,
Yeah.
but generally, I mean, I'm really looking forward to it.
There was a time when Channel 9 and Channel 11 in New York would carry just about every game there was, from spring training on to fall follow-up.
That was a great time.
Yeah.
It really got you through the winter.
Yeah. Anyway, let's see if we can get through the news here.
Yes, there's a lot of it, as usual. There you have it. That is Ridgeway at Hathaway Lane, and that hearing.
Ridgeway Country Club.
Yes,
former Ridgeway Country Club.
And that's the former country club on the right. And the hearing on that will be on Wednesday at 6 o'clock. Coming up, it will be a public hearing on the alternative site plan shown here,
which they submitted.
Yes.
This is French American School saying we're going to build on only part of the property now, and so the neighborhood no longer has to be worried about it being such a large project, right?
And
now we need to say where the hearing is going to be.
at the White Plains Performing Arts Center. Plenty of seats for everybody. It will be videotaped by White Plains Television and put on the next day because there is no facilities for taping at
well,
this
for
Performing Arts
transmitting
Center.
a live program
Yes, right.
from there at the moment.
But anyway.
And actually, I think this may be the first, if not one of the first, public hearings to be held at the Performing Arts Center.
Well, I think everybody learned quite a lesson from the Astorino Town Hall debacle.
At how crowded City Hall was for that.
Right.
Yeah, actually, way back when my wife Susan and I were in line to actually operate the Performing Arts Center before things fell apart there. We had helped design the project way back in the formative days, and part of what we suggested was that here would be a great facility for the city to hold things like public hearings.
Right. Everybody could
to
come.
make it easy for everyone to get there in comfort, watch and participate in these things. And also at that time, I proposed that it would be very easy to put in the capability to produce live television there.
But they didn't.
But they didn't.
But they didn't. But we do have some nice live television right now. We thought we'd ask John Sheehan of the Gedney Association how he sizes this hearing up and how the Gedney Association feels about it going in. We interviewed him on People to Be Heard, and you can see that interview in its entirety on www.wpcommunitymedia.org. And here's what Mr. Sheehan had to say.
So safety is the key issue. FASNY says, well, we're going to require everyone to sign an agreement that they will come in and they won't come in through the neighborhood. That is patently unenforceable and will be violated by people.
Yeah, you were pointing out various routes to the school by going from Hathaway up from Bryant.
Absolutely.
Right, yeah.
There under the plan, this new plan, there will be, the essential part, I should say, of the former plan coming through North Street was it's a regional arterial road. Difficult still, but a regional arterial road. And they would not be able to come in through local streets to access a school. In this particular application, there's 25 different ways probably that FASNY parents could come in. If Ridgeway is congested, and it will be, there was a terrible accident there this past Friday night, and the eastbound lane was shut down completely. So they're going to go through the local streets that are very narrow. Gedney Esplanade, Heatherbloom, and all the other intervening streets. It's like, this plan is like Swiss cheese. There's no protection for the neighborhood.
So if it's approved, will the Gedney Association sue to try and stop it?
Unquestionably.
Unquestionably.
Yes. We feel very strong that this endangers the health, safety, and welfare of the community. And under New York state law, when safety is at risk, if you will, and here I have 2 young children myself. This will be, as I said, like Swiss cheese, cars coming in from all different directions. Frankly, my wife said we have to move if this comes in. And I think a lot of people are very concerned about it from that perspective.
Well, you know, John, it's interesting that he mentioned that the Gedney Association would plan to sue if the city approves this, because if the city turns it down, it's almost certain that the French-American school would file a lawsuit. Yeah. So it appears that even if they were to vote on this thing tomorrow, it's going to be tied up in court if people do what they threatened to do for a long time.
Apparently, they are not going to vote on it Wednesday night because the recent agenda that came out this morning said that they're just going to have the hearing, no resolutions on.
I would also anticipate that the council people themselves will not have any particular comment on Wednesday evening. So the hearing takes place, 6 o'clock is the start time. It's at the Performing Arts Center at the City Center.
Right. And there was another decision within the last month, and that was that the council turned down the group home on 22 New York Avenue. They voted 6-1. Beth Smeda was the only council person voicing concern that these poor disabled people were being shut out.
She voted against it. She also, we need to add, has decided not to run for re-election this coming November. And frankly, what happens here is largely up to New York State, because the state itself can easily say, you have to allow them to build this.
Right, and in fact, it is going to be decided by a hearing with an officer of the Office for People with Developmental Disabilities, and a little bit later this month, I believe April 19th. But that'll be interesting because I understand they're also going to devote some money to hiring another lawyer for the city to help defend
a consultant, yes, who presumably has expertise in this type of lawsuit.
Right. Shocker of the week is the opt-out rate in White Plains. And
right, it's been a couple of years now that we've gone back and forth on this testing story, and it does seem to be a growing movement among parents just not to participate in this, to keep their children from taking the test. And so we got new figures this week, and it shows that this campaign to keep your kids from taking these mandated tests is growing in strength.
The school district has done some analysis, and you see it there, that those figures are directly from the school district. And what was fascinating to me was that 25% of the 7th and 8th graders kept out. Now that, we need to have a demographic analysis of who dropped out or opted out.
Well, you could do that by race, you could do it by economic strata.
And grade.
And grade.
If smarter kids are dropping out, or A students are dropping out, that tells an entirely different story.
But I'll tell you, John, when you and I were in school, if 25% of us refused to take a test for any reason, the detention room would be filled to overflowing.
Do they even have detention anymore?
I don't know.
It would keep them away from their sports, But anyway, this is a story that people have to pay attention to, because if you don't have enough people taking these tests, you don't know whether you've fixed them enough.
Well, aside from that, you don't know, are they valid? Do they present a representative cross-section of what's really going on in the educational system across the population of students? You just don't know.
Absolutely.
We're about to find out something, though, on a completely different subject, and that is the upcoming race for county executive. On the right is the current county executive, Robert P. Astorino, and on the left is State Senator George Latimer, who formerly was in the county Board of Legislators, where he served as chairman for a while. And he has been under some pressure within Democratic circles to run for county executive against Astorino this time around.
And he is going to decide next week, from what we understand.
Now, we also have to note that in the race already is Ken Jenkins. He's the former chairman of the County Board of Legislators. He has thrown his hat into the ring. In Democratic circles, I understand that they had been pressuring somewhat Assemblywoman Amy Paulin to run for county executive, and she opted not to do that. And so they now have turned to Latimer to see if they can convince him to go for it. What has to happen here is that the candidates have to seek the County Democratic Party's nomination, which is done at a convention. Now, if there's a fight and they can't resolve it, and the candidates are going at each other, we could see ourselves with a primary, a Democratic primary to select a candidate to run against Astorino.
I don't think you'll see that. They cannot have any divisiveness. you know, going against the Astorino
one would think that
machine.
if you hold up the presidential election as an example, Democrats would want to unify at all levels.
Strife at
Yeah.
all costs.
Yeah.
And George Latimer will be coming on People to Be Heard at the end of the month.
What you can
Right.
watch for
Yes,
it
right.
either on the same cable stations or online at WPCNR.com, WhitePlainsWeek.com, WPCommunityMedia.org, and
all over the planet.
Senator Latimer also told you something interesting about the state budget. Did he
Yes, he did. He said that it looks like the the cab company, what is it?
Uber.
Lyft and Uber, that will be approved with some sort of option out.
So that large cities can continue to ban Uber from operating if they want.
As of yesterday afternoon, he didn't have the plan, and the education aid is going to stay the same for districts that they got last year, but there will be more money coming.
Yeah,
about $1 billion or so.
So White Plains, in proposing their 1.76% tax increase, I believe it was, really has to be satisfied with the amount of state aid they got last year because
it was
we
the
don't know
largest
right
in
now.
25 years. Amazing stuff. And now,
and so did he make any comments to you about the status of the budget itself? Are they going to be sinking back into the same old kind of gridlock we have seen for years?
Yes, he said that it's basically being decided by the three men in a room, and
that's the governor.
Yesterday,
and the Senate
everybody
leader
was
and
sitting in
the
their
House Assembly
offices,
leader.
talking to the media, I guess. But because nobody ever talks to me, so I guess they were really
can't imagine why, John.
Right, exactly. But anyway, I guess the budget will be in on Monday.
And the city's budget is due out also. We're supposed to get a peek at what the city is going to be spending.
They have a surplus too.
On Monday.
Thanks to the increase in the assessment rolls, they're going to get an automatic $1 million out of the new assessments. They're up from $277 million to $282 million.
And one thing we've been talking about is the status of sales tax. So the increase in the real estate tax assessment roll might help offset whatever happens to the sales tax if things don't go
right. Well,
too
they're getting
on that
later
front.
and later every month getting the sales tax figures out. They were not out as of yesterday, which is really late.
Yeah,
we were looking for the February figure.
Speaking of figures, you also found out this week that the county is going to be paying something like over $4 million to fix up
the seawall.
The seawall and what was a bit of a boardwalk over at Playland that was damaged by Hurricane Sandy. It's been in terrible disrepair and closed to the public
as you can see,
for years now.
As of last Saturday, the wreckage of the old boardwalk was removed, and Peter Tartaglia, the Commissioner of Recreation and Parks for the county, said was going to be repaired out of a cost of $4.1 million. He expects it to be completed in the fall, but he's not committing to that. And
most, if not all, the money
FEMA is
comes
going
from
to give
FEMA,
us the money for
federal
it.
money.
Right.
Unless something happens in Washington with all the budget cutting there, but we think this money has been committed, and so the county certainly is counting on it because they've started the reconstruction already.
So that's really good news.
Yeah.
And now it is time for what you've all been waiting for, Trump the President. Peter has a story, and by the way, Trump the President is sponsored today by this product, the Donald Trump Chia Bust. A must for all Trump fans.
Actually, that's something that we saw on sale at the Galleria this week. You can't make this stuff up. They're not really a sponsor. We don't have a sponsor.
We don't have sponsors.
Yeah.
But
Anyway.
Meanwhile, let's get to the carnage.
Now here's the serious stuff. A lawyer for retired General Michael Flynn confirms that he is seeking immunity from prosecution in exchange for testifying before both the Senate and House Intelligence Committees as they investigate Russian interference with the election and the involvement, if any, of the Trump campaign and its people. The Wall Street Journal also reports that Flynn is seeking immunity from prosecution from the FBI in exchange for cooperating and testifying. The FBI is conducting intelligence and criminal investigations of its own. The FBI often grants immunity when using a criminal to help convict a higher-up criminal. In this case, Flynn was a close advisor to Donald Trump during the campaign and was appointed by Trump as his national security advisor in the White House. He was fired from that position. Flynn reported directly to the president. Paul Manafort, Trump's former campaign manager and longtime friend and business associate, says he's willing to testify in the congressional investigations, but he has not yet formally asked for immunity. Manafort's financial dealings in New York real estate reportedly were under investigation by Preet Bharara. You know him, John? The federal prosecutor who was fired by President Trump.
Now you know why he was fired.
Among other dealings, Manafort's cash purchase of a condo in Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue. Among the questions Bharara reportedly was asking, where did that money come from, and was it dirty money being laundered? The BBC reports that it has confirmed the truth of one of the items in the now infamous dossier on Donald Trump and his campaign, prepared by British spy Christopher Steele. The BBC says it is true that a Russian diplomat assigned to Washington was recalled to Moscow last August because Moscow became afraid that what he was doing in the plot to interfere with our presidential election was about to be exposed by the news media. The diplomat was Mikhail Kulagin, if I pronounce that correctly. If not, it's Kulagin. Look it up.
Yes, naming names.
The Senate Intelligence Committee has started investigating Trump's connection to Russia and alleged collusion with the Russians to spread false stories, smear Hillary Clinton, and influence the outcome of the election. This after the House Intelligence Committee's investigation has, at least for now, come to a screeching halt after committee chairman Devin Nunes was caught in a conspiracy with the White House, which appeared to be designed to scuttle the investigation. Some White House staffers gave him access to classified information, which he then turned around and told the president about. The FBI director, James Comey, wanted to reveal that the FBI was conducting intelligence and criminal investigations into the Trump campaign last July, but Comey was denied permission to go public with that. Apparently,
that's a serious problem.
Apparently, the Obama administration was afraid that if Comey was allowed to reveal that Trump was under investigation for ties to Russia, it would be accused of playing a partisan political trick.
But you got to do it.
At the time, it was felt that Hillary Clinton was certain to win the presidency, and a disclosure could do more harm than good. Wall Street tycoon Robert Mercer and his daughter, who are heavy funders of the Trump campaign and who funded the alt-right website Breitbart, are funding now a television ad campaign to try to build support for the Trump presidency. This is after the embarrassing failure of Trump Care, which would have kicked 24 million people off their health care, and this week's Gallup poll, which showed Trump's presidency with only a 35% approval rating, the lowest of any president ever in their first 100 days in office. President Trump this week signed an executive order removing consumer protections put into place by President Obama, which protected all of us from having records of our online browsing activities captured and sold or being given away by internet service providers. And what does this do? It means they can make money selling our information. It also means government would have a much easier time finding out who is going to things like anti-Trump websites. You think? President Trump signed an executive order which will allow more poisonous gases to be put into the atmosphere. He rescinded the government's Clean Power Plant program, which set limits of how much bad stuff coal-fired power plants can belch into the air we breathe.
Belch is such a horrible word.
It is, but although he claimed this would bring back the coal industry and create jobs for coal miners, it is unlikely to do so. Coal mine employment is now 50,000, about a third of what it was 40 years ago. Operators of the remaining coal-fired power plants will now be able to make more profits by not having to operate equipment which cleans the power plant's emissions before discharge into the atmosphere. Trump's daughter Ivanka is being given a job in the White House, complete with office but not a salary. She'll be a special advisor to Daddy. There are anti-nepotism regulations which are supposed to prevent something like this.
But since she's not being paid,
they're going to try to avoid the anti-nepotism regulations during the campaign. Trump promised that he would not take a salary if elected president. Turns out that was just another lie.
oh, it's costing him so much.
He has been taking a salary, comes to comes to $400,000 a year, about $140,000 in extra benefits and taxes that the government pays. President Obama and Chinese President Xi Jinping will meet next week at Trump's estate, Mar-a-Lago. All of us will pay for Trump's company's property for the meeting.
Right. I wonder if
April 6th and 7th.
It would be takeout.
Climate change and Chinese military maneuvers in the South China Sea are potential topics, as would be the recent missile firings by North Korea. Vice President Pence had to be called in by Senate Republican Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to cast the tie-breaking vote on a bill to defund Planned Parenthood and any health care provider which provides abortions. The bill has now gone to the White House for President Trump's signature.
Well, that is stunning. I guess that's one way to get birth rate up, isn't it? Because but the white population has to start having relations more, don't you think, for that to happen? But anyway.
Well, hey, now, you really don't have to do that because you can watch baseball.
That's true.
It's baseball
in fact,
season.
The White Plains Tigers softball team played last Saturday. It was great to see them out.
They had done some work on those fields over the winter, didn't they?
Yeah.
So it looked like they had done something to the dirt and the grass and enhanced the pitcher's mound.
Yeah. Yes, they had the baseball field they were working on. But be that as it may, we hope the rains clear away so we can start playing ball next week. Now, great night for Westchester Broadway Theater last night. They opened Mamma Mia, the 8th longest running musical of all time.
Someone told me that it ran like 15 years on Broadway.
Yeah,
Something
they
like
just left in 2013, and
that music was by ABBA, right?
They wrote it all. And you remember the anthems of ABBA, the Swedish pop group of the 70s and 80s, with driving vibrance and intoxicating, swaying, seductive beats, and so true to life and true to feeling lyrics that moved you into the hustle. Well, you'll hear them all. It's a great show. We love Michelle Dawson in the lead, the woman in gold there, and we heartily recommend it.
The Westchester Broadway Theater in Elmsford.
Yes, absolutely, and it's a great deal. And try the moussaka. John Baley, Peter Katz for Jim Benneroff. Good night for White Plains Week.
This has been White Plains Week, news and commentary about White Plains, Westchester, and the world. The views and opinions expressed on this program were solely those of the participants. White Plains Week, produced by White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, and presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76 and Verizon Fios Channel 45. You may view White Plains Week anytime on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. For White Plains Week, this is Peter Katz speaking.